This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 445, recorded on May 14th, 2020. Here in Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find your way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a... Mike, summer could come any day. Like, it just keeps...
But the lawn has never looked greener.
Oh, it is
know,
great.
that the rain we've been getting lately, which we weren't getting earlier this season, has kicked in, and man, that lawn is green.
It's pretty great. It's pretty easy to be a lawn hero. We had, of course, big thanks to Dave McCabe, who was on last week talking about his lawn. Richard, are you a lawn guy? Do you?
No.
Okay.
My wife is the green thumb, the gardener. Okay. A lady comes once a week to help her with that stuff. I don't even mow the lawn. Okay.
Oh, man.
I plug the lawnmower in on Friday morning so the battery can charge up. That's it.
That's it. How did you luck out on that? Just you guys just decided that's how you're going to split it?
That's it. It's her thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, right on. And do you guys have an extensive lawn? Do you have a big?
Oh, we do. We got a good sized lawn. We're on just under an acre here, I think. And so we have a big front. We're on one of those lots that's on the curve. So it kind of gets wider as you move to the front from the back, and the back's pretty wide. So we got a good chunk of lawn here.
Yeah, Mike,
St.
I saw
Augustine grass. That's what you grow.
Oh, yeah. And then you get, the rain, and you're down in Florida, so that gets covered pretty well. It gets pretty warm, but it's pretty moist down there. Mike, I saw some pictures you got out last weekend. I did too. I've mowed twice since Dave was on the show.
Have you really? I wanted to so bad, but with the rain and stuff, it's been so wet. Like last night and stuff like that I haven't been able to get out for a second.
Actually, 3 times. So we podcasted Wednesday. Jeez. I went out and mowed Friday afternoon because I was like, okay, it was pretty thick, so I got that done. And then Saturday afternoon, I did it again because Dave's like, do it twice. Just get out there, just knock it out, right? So then nothing. Then Tuesday, there was enough to mow it again, so I went out and mowed Tuesday. And we have rain Wednesday, Thursday, so but I'm gonna try and mow either tomorrow or Saturday. But big thanks to Dave for getting us all that lawn care stuff. Dave did a great job. It was a super popular show. Dave, thanks for coming on and for doing that. Of course, we posted that show 444 along with full transcripts and show notes. That's out there. Some pretty good show notes. Dave mentioned a few products, and if you haven't gone out and listened to it yet, catch the show notes HGG444 for that show, and then theaverageguy.tv/HGG445 for this one. We may not have a lot, but we'll have full transcripts that are available. Of course, you can listen mobile on the road or maybe walking the dog. You're still on the road when you're walking the dog. So walking the dog, mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, whatever chores you have, vacuuming. Throw us in, stream us live, homegadgetgeeks.com if you want to do it that way. Then don't forget, you can also follow the show schedule. I've got some scheduling to do right now, but head out to theaverageguy.eventbrite.com and you'll see the schedule. You see Rich's show that's out there right now if you want to get it done that way. And then subscribe while you're there. Go out to theaverageguy.tv/subscribe to the newsletter. I didn't send one this week, but we'll get one this weekend as well. We have Rich Hay with us tonight. Rich is a longtime friend, podcaster. Rich, I think I've known you for almost as many years as I've known most of the folks around here. 7, 8, 9 years now going on. Welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. We were just saying it's been since November. It was early November timeframe, I think, or mid-November that I was last here.
Yeah, and I think this is your 9th or 10th
so long
time.
Ago. It seems like so long ago too.
It does. Lots of things happen.
Lots has happened.
When we were in the pre-show, we were kind of talking about communication platforms, and we didn't plan on this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. There have been so many. Okay, Zoom, of course, has popped up as being kind of the leader, in on this. But then, Rich, I think you said, and I saw it too, Google has announced that Meet is available now for folks who want to use it, right? So Meet. Is it Meet.Google? Yeah.
I think it's meet.google.com. Yeah.
And then what else, Rich, what else have you been, Chris, we use StreamYard to do the podcast, but what other platforms have you been using? You mentioned Teams, right? You use Teams for the MVP?
Yep, MVP Summit went virtual this year because all this COVID stuff started just a few weeks ahead of Summit, and they decided to go virtual. That was all done in Microsoft Teams, and it was actually a very good experience. I wasn't planning to go this year because I couldn't because of class schedules, but when it went virtual, I was like, yeah, I'll get in there. So I did, and it was great. It really was. When you consider everybody streamed from their homes, the Microsoft folks were in their own houses, in their own home offices. We were all wherever we were and doing the video chat thing. It held up very well. They had a few hiccups. I think Microsoft in general, and I think the big tech companies in general, as all this work from home remote stuff kind of picked up initially, they had some hiccups. But I think Microsoft and the others got some, resources spun up pretty quick to take care of that load. And in fact, what was the number? 75 million daily users on Teams is what Satya Nadella shared a couple of weeks ago at their third quarter their financials at the end of the third quarter. So, and then of course, Zoom said we've got 300 million and then came back a little later and said, nah, actually we don't have 300 million, but we have this. So they adjusted their numbers. But I've been on Zoom because
it's a lot.
They've got a lot of users and they got caught off guard because they've had to deal with a lot of security type stuff, even though they were a pretty big user base. I'm not sure why they weren't working on security at the time, but they kind of got forced. So you got Google Meets now, Messenger. Facebook just released Messenger Rooms as another way to chat with people. That's available in the Messenger app or on the Facebook website or Facebook app.
That actually works pretty easy from a guy who uses StreamYard to do the podcast. My sister called me on using Facebook Messenger, and that's actually as easy to connect to as a Hangout as this was. Right? There's no plugins to install, no nothing. You just connect. There's some basic controls in it. It works well.
And you've always been able to do video calls on Messenger. But this is an opportunity to now bring more people into that. And we've used Zoom for family calls. So we've got family on my wife's side over in the UK and Italy with the boys. So we've been connected with them a few times. We did a big Hey family call one Sunday afternoon. There was like 17 or 18 of us on the call between brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, nieces, nephews, and everything. So and then of course, Microsoft announced their Microsoft 365 stuff. The big changes coming with personal and family, and now Teams being available for family use. And Skype got some upgrades. They got a thing in there called Meet Now, so you can do the similar type of thing and have a multi-person call.
Yeah, I've been loving Teams. I live in Teams pretty much all day and constantly on video calls, and that thing has been really rock solid, especially I'd say for the last month. Maybe in the first few weeks there when everyone was probably starting to load it, maybe a few hiccups, but ever since then, it's been great. Only feature I really want them to release there is the ability to call in via my phone to a video call, only because my boss has terrible internet connectivity. He fails on every platform. Doesn't matter which platform it is, but when he can call in, at least his audio is clear, even if his video starts to go in and out. It's the only feature I wish they had there. But I agree. Teams has been fantastic. We use Zoom on the family side. My grandma, who is not a tech person at all, my uncle went over and set her up with an iPad and put it on there, and she got to Zoom all the grandkids, and she just thought that was the coolest thing she had ever seen. She had never even seen that technology work, and so it's been cool to see those different companies and how you utilize them in the family space and the workspace. I've been pretty impressed so far, to be honest.
Oh yeah, it's been a boon. Don't get me wrong. I said this in my last podcast. It's great that the companies are bragging about the increase in numbers and the users, right? So Spotify's reporting record number of subscribers and listeners, and all of these services are reporting big increases, right? Big hockey stick type increases. But will they retain that when all this settles down? That will be a good point of, looking at and seeing if that happens. But good on them for having the tools available and being able to get out in front of it.
And that's got to be the hardest part when you think of being like the project manager for some of these, right? And you're planning out resources and you're trying to figure out cost wise, okay, do we spin up a bunch of, new servers to support this? What do we need? And then do we have the ability that if we're going to start paying for that, do we have the ability to quickly cut those off after this whole spike? Otherwise they're going to go under real quick if they're paying for all that and not having any income stream come in. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully it's not too big of a headache for them, and hopefully it's the providers of the data centers and stuff are working with them on that.
Yeah, Brian, and I think so.
Brian in chat says he's been using WebEx for staff work meetings. You guys been using any of the other GoToMeeting or any of those varieties?
WebEx is Cisco, right? That's Cisco WebEx, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
That's the one you see on the news channels when you're interviewing people remotely and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
That's what we use as well for work. So anything external.
We're Teams completely for work for Informa, using Teams for. In fact, Build's coming up now. I know we're going to talk about Build next week, but Build set the media up a Microsoft Teams site. And so we've got a channel that we can go into and make contact with the WAG-Ed folds and the PR people and reps and stuff like that to get content. And that's where they're sharing all the embargoed material and stuff with us. So they're using Teams for anything and everything.
Yeah,
I mean, they really are.
I think the media, though, has had a pretty good impact on WebEx, especially compared to Zoom, because I use WebEx all the time. It's the account I have through work. So all my external meetings are done through WebEx. I was shocked the amount of comments I get like, oh, man, we got to use WebEx. It's so clunky. Like, why aren't we using Zoom? And I mean, I see a tad difference, but not enough for like everyone to make comments. I think everyone's honestly seeing the hype of how great Zoom is and how it's making everyone else look bad. And it's just almost like ingrained in them, but they haven't really, you can't really point to anything that says Zoom is better than WebEx. I have zero problems with WebEx, but the amount of comments I get on why we're not using Zoom has surprised me.
Yeah. Teams
Go
for
ahead.
us.
Go ahead, Rich.
Well, I was going to say the whole Zoom thing, right? I'll tell you one thing that Zoom forced people like Teams to do. I know Teams for sure. Teams defaulted to like viewing two of the members of the call, right, on the screen. Yeah. Well, they're about to release the 3x3 grid because Zoom had that. Right. So Zoom has influenced this industry in a way that I don't think anybody could have predicted before all the COVID stuff.
Zoom set the standard really fast, whether they intended to or not. That became,
despite their security issues.
Well, totally. I mean, they admitted that they wanted to be the easy to connect. We're going to default to easy instead of security every single time, right? I think they admitted to that. Now they've had to kind of play catch up, and they're kind of coming back on that, but. Certainly
they just released a big update. They just released version 5. So
we're getting weekly updates in the enterprise for Zoom. So we split between Zoom and Teams, and it just kind of depends on what we're trying to do with it. So if we're trying to broadcast, we're going to use the webinar software from Zoom. That's just the way it's going to go internally for everybody in the company. That really just makes the most sense for us. But for a lot of our internal stuff, when it's just a couple people, Teams is where we go because we can share stuff in there, right? And so when you're doing work, I'm sharing spreadsheets, I'm working with folks, messages are there. You can do both. You can leave both messages and speak in the same channel. I mean, that's super convenient over Zoom. Not a lot of that stuff gets saved, and honestly, I don't think we want that stuff getting saved on Zoom at this point, right? So the Teams is secure. There's some things, and there's some. I imagine when this is over, we'll probably and Microsoft's got everything kind of buttoned down on Teams. We'll probably try to make another run at 100% Teams. That's just kind of that will probably be. We'll keep a Zoom account around for some crazy things when we absolutely have to use it that way, but. I think that's been a lot of people. Alex said, he told in the chat room, there he goes. Alex said, Teams for us misses having the contact list being separate, like in Skype. And there's some Teams has still got some features to go.
They're working hard. They've accelerated some stuff. As Google rolls out yet another product.
Yeah, and they have a couple different ways to do that. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I think we still have a long summer, Rich. You were talking about Build. Let's just talk about that really quick here. Okay. You're going to connect. Build's going to be virtual, not only this year, but already committed to next year. The MVP Summit was already committed, right, to be virtual. So
next year,
you're going to be in that virtual. As we think about Microsoft, you're following them really, really close. You report on them. As we go into the summer and you think about Build, give me some idea. What are you excited? What kind of things, the new updates are rolling out. They're not terribly exciting because they're just getting fit and finish and stability into them. But what are you getting excited about?
Everybody, most of the guys in this chat room, I would imagine, are aware that they're about to roll out the May 2020 update, the feature update for the first half of this year. That's going to be known as Windows 10 version 2004. And the target is the last week of May. There was actually it wasn't leaked. It was posted by a team called the Driver Roadmap Team or something like that last week. And it basically showed the 3 days of the month of May that are laid aside for feature update release. circled in yellow. It even had a legend that said feature update. So we know it's coming late May. Even Mary Jo Foley reported on that. I think she had that date beforehand. So we're getting a May 2020 update. This is what Windows 10 will be 5 years old in July, right?
It's hard to believe.
July 2015 was when that first release was done. So at the 5-year point, we've had a feature update every year. Some of the early years we had 2. I suspect that this fall update is going to be another small one, right? Like last year, kind of stability and things of that nature. And you're right. It's kind of, there used to be this kind of excitement about new features, but I just don't know that we have a whole lot more to go on Windows 10 to be feature, to add these whiz bang features. It's running well for me. I run it across a whole lot of different devices in different places. But so it'll be interesting to see this because they just recently made a change, right? So they've dropped skip ahead. Skip ahead ring is gone. It's been shut down. Fast ring is now this special branch that was RS pre-release, but they just released a build out of the manganese branch just to test things, they said. And so this will be where all the developers dump their new stuff in, right? So fast ring builds are going to show you the latest and greatest from the development team as they're trying stuff out in Windows 10. Slow ring, been baking since December for the 20H1, the May 2020 update. So it has had now we're in May, almost 6 months of kind of just sitting in its stew and sitting there kind of working cumulative updates. We actually started getting builds for this release that's about to come up last February. They started releasing builds for that last February. It's the longest we've ever had a cycle of release updates for a build. So I'm hoping 2004 turns out to be a really solid release.
Yeah.
So you got that coming. Build, I've been through the schedule builder. I looked over stuff. I saw nothing for Windows 10X. So they're not going to talk about Windows 10X, and everybody's aware, right?
Right.
A couple, 3 weeks ago, Panos Panay, the new chief of Windows software and hardware, came out and said, we're going to come at this again. It's not time for dual screens. So the Neo has basically been delayed until who knows when. But they're going to focus Windows 10X on single screen devices. So it'll be interesting because Windows 10X is a container-based system. So it runs in so I don't know if your everyday laptop can run Windows 10X if it doesn't have like 64-bit hardware and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see where they choose to go with that. I would expect an insider program for that, for people that's got the right hardware. And so you got that. You've got, they just released a new Surface hardware, but in build next week, the number of sessions in the session list about AI, about security, about Azure. I think I saw quantum ones there. They got a lot of community stuff. They're trying to make it give it a community feel, including one welding with Thea. I saw this woman's going to do 2 sessions, 2 hours long about welding in the middle of the night. Yeah. And she's doing some kind of project for build, but so she's going to talk about welding and planning, I think is what the focus is. So they got that kind of stuff. Power BI, Power Automate are big subjects this year at Build. Donna Sakar, who used to be the chief of the Windows Insider program, she's now one of the advocates for Power BI, Power Platform. And it's this low code, no code kind of catchphrase where they say you don't have to be a coder to be able to build Power BI apps. Yeah. I'm actually going to put that to the test in a few weeks for a story, see if that's a reality or not.
Yeah.
So there's lots of interesting going on. Satya Nadella's keynote's only they call it a segment. It's not a keynote anymore. It's only 20 minutes long. So, and I've been through, there's some sessions I have to be up in the evening to attend.
Yeah, they're all day, right? They're kind of doing a 24/7.
They're basically starting Tuesday morning all the way through Thursday morning.
Yeah.
And it just runs straight through. There's some repeats that will rerun and do that kind of thing for time zones. But it seems like they really handed this to Scott Hanselman, who is one of their, I know he's not a corporate VP, but he's quite senior in the company. And I think this is the real test for Microsoft to see how this goes, how the engagement is, and see, because they already know they're going to do next year the same way. So this will tweak things for next year. I think the potential is there for Build and other events like this, like Summit, to become virtual events, period. Of course, a lot of that's going to hinge. You can't, you cannot get away from the fact that the in-person hallway kind of connections you make at events or on the expo floor are a big part of these things.
Yeah. But here's what I hope for. Like it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and.
Right.
And everybody's been hesitant in this space because the in-person is so lucrative, or it appeared to be lucrative, right? And that's what appeared to be what everybody wanted. All these conferences, and it was an arms race, between Google and Amazon and Apple and Microsoft, who can do the bigger, badder, but give away the better stuff, right? And I think you got a swag bag, right? They sent you for build. I show that. I mean,
cool.
Yeah,
they sent. They said it was for the first 1,000 or a few thousand registrants. They haven't released any public numbers about how many people registered, but they sent this really cool kit. And so everybody knows swag is the big draw at these events. The expo show floor, people walk around with bags just to collect the swag. And so, but you get a badge, and there's a lanyard in here, a build lanyard to go in my collection of lanyards.
Yeah. Which is great that they understood that there's an old legacy there with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Socks are a really popular swag item lately. I don't know why. Microsoft loves developers.
Weird socks are popular.
Yeah. They sent a couple of sets of stickers, kind of glossy, sticky stickers.
Yeah.
And then they sent a bento box. So this bento box, it comes with there is a fork, knife, and spoon in here. It's made out of a composite material that is based on bamboo.
Yeah, super green.
Yeah, and then inside there's a little divider, and it's to me, what I understand a bento box to be is something I order at a restaurant to eat.
Yeah.
And so it's intended like a little lunchbox to carry food in and get you going. So it was pretty cool that they thought of that, right?
Yeah, no. But you could do a virtual conference and still provide swag, right? They just did this. And then I think there's just a lot of folks, for whatever reason, who can't make these things.
No,
and
absolutely.
I think they're going to see, we could do 10,000 people in person. Those will fill up, but then make the rest of it available virtual. Like I don't get that. We have a summit. Gallup, where I work, has a summit every year. We've been in person for the last 5. We're forced, of course, to go virtual this year. And I'm really hoping it kind of helps us to see we could do, because they always feel like if you provide a virtual option, it's going to rob from the in-person.
Right.
And I don't think that's true. I mean, I think people will come.
You're always going to have people that can't come. Right.
Yeah, right.
Microsoft every year build sessions go online for free after people have attended and paid money, hotel, flight, and fee to get in, which is about $2,400 for a 3 or 4 day conference. Ignites the same way. Vast majority of that content goes online after, and it's not restricted, right? Anybody can view the content afterwards.
Right.
So the idea of being able to have the digital alongside the in-person, I'm with you. I don't think it will still from the one or the other. There are going to be people after all this anyway, all this COVID stuff, that aren't going to go back to travel in the way they used to travel, and that kind of thing. So by accommodating people with that, I think now then you get to question, how do you pay for that? Because the bandwidth still costs money. It's still, so that work and effort still costs some type of, there's a dollar figure, even though it doesn't feel like it. There's a dollar figure to that, providing that digital content.
Well, that doesn't have to be free.
No, I agree.
Well, the hardest part I think of is, sponsorship for these. They have to rethink these event management teams are having to rethink, okay, how do we bring in money? Because every banner you see, every elevator that's sponsored by, the elevator sponsored by whatever, all that in-person stuff. I mean, that is the revenue that allows, maybe not some of these Microsoft or Apple conferences, but some of the bigger expos, things like that. All of that is ad revenue. And so you got to really rethink, if we do this digitally, or even if we move 50% digitally, our advertiser is going to be willing to spend that money for less eyeballs in person seeing those banners, whatever they are.
Well, and I think they have even greater opportunity to advertise online. Like if they would just learn from podcasters and mix that stuff in to the things they're doing.
But do they want that? Like the best part now is a lot of times those advertisers, they don't have to, it doesn't have to mess with the flow of the show. It doesn't have to be too, and this segment is brought to you by this. It can be more subtle.
You have to do it that way. I could put advertising around this thing.
Right? You've been at these big conferences. You wear a badge. When you go up to a booth in the badge, what do?
Scan it.
On the Xbox, they scan it because they're getting your contact info. You're called a lead. Right. So even people registered online are leads.
Right. That's true.
So those sponsors can still get all those names and email addresses. And unfortunately, it's kind of like scammers and fishers. They're going to send out a blast 1,000 emails, and if they get 50 back, that's a plus for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you still have that element of things. Because Informa, my parent company, is an events company, and so this is totally thrown us for a loop, right? Our editorial stuff is still getting a big push, and we're doing more webinars and things like that digitally, and we're doing some of our events kind of digitally as well. But to show proof of concept kind of thing, and we're not going to go back to just dependent upon in-person shows when this is over.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be doing the digital piece because it's kind of accelerated that move for us as a company to provide those digital platforms for the people that can't travel, that don't have a budget for it, or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Right now we're offering them all for free, but again, even a free webinar that we do results in a registration and a username and a password and a name, so you get a lead for the sponsor.
But I think, Rich, that's another area that we need to think differently about. The value, because it's online and virtual, somehow the value is less. It's the same. We're doing this where we have speakers. It's the same speakers, guys. It's the same people delivering the same information. Why was it valuable in person and not valuable online? In fact, online should be more valuable because I didn't have to travel. I didn't have to go anywhere. I get it instantly. I can watch it whenever I want. It's more convenient. Like, you're paying for convenience, but somehow we've gotten this idea, like, if it's online, it has to be free.
It should be free. Exactly. It's kind of like the app economy. Everybody thinks apps should cost nothing because there's no work in developing them.
I perpetuate that myth because I have a free podcast, right? It's kind of the way it goes, but it can be in those things where the value is provided. It can be. So I'm kind of hoping when we're done with this, 2, 3, 4 years from now, that every conference has a way of going, hey, show up in person here and you can do it. And you get the virtual ticket. You can still get all the stuff the virtual people do, but you're going to get some more because you're here. And then we have a virtual ticket, and you're still going to pay for it, and it's still going to be valuable, and you're still going to get access to information plus all the stuff, all the back, all the other keynotes and all the session breakouts or whatever. Right. So I think that's the model we need to go to for sure.
I think it's kind of the future. It really is. So. This has just accelerated it.
Yeah. So, Rich, you started a new podcast called Faith, Tech, and Space.
I did,
when you stopped
after I was on your show last, I started that up just a couple of weeks later.
You did. So we haven't heard from you since then. How's that going? And the question I really want to ask is what have you learned from it? Because you dropped a pretty successful podcast, and you picked up another little different topic, kind of the same, but what have you learned? So tell us how it's going, and then tell us what you learned.
I just recorded and released my 9th episode this past weekend, and it's having started since November, so it's a slow go. And the reason why I opted to close down Observe Tech was because of my entry into formation for the permanent diaconate in the Catholic Church, and I knew I was going to have class schedules and all this other stuff. So I did not want to. I needed to prioritize, and that podcast had been around for 10 years, right? So when I started that podcast back in, I guess that would have been around 2008, 2009, I think. The world was very different in those days, right? We didn't have all the social media we have now. You didn't have all these podcast directories and resources like that. It took me a couple, 3 years to get my podcast out into different places to be accessed, right? Within 2 or 3 weeks of setting up this podcast and recording my first episode, I had, in fact, if you on my Faith Tech, within a couple weeks, I was in iTunes, Google Play Music, Blueberry, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Deezer. And then, of course, I had an RSS and an email feed. So, and that was within just a couple weeks. I already had that distribution running. And I've since added a few others. The last 2 episodes I've live streamed on YouTube as I recorded that episode, just to try something a little bit different. Yeah. I'm using the OBS software. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah. Mike used it back in the day.
Oh, okay. And it's kind of cool. It really is, because it lets you set up different screens and shots and scenes and things like that. So I've been having some fun with that. So just to do something a little bit different, right? But so far so good. What it does, the show does, is I'm still talking about tech and space, which are two of my very passionate subjects, and there's plenty to talk about in those two areas. But the piece I added was the faith part, right? Because I've entered formation. This year I'm an aspirant for holy orders, and this September I will be presented as a candidate for holy orders, and so it just allows me to share my formation experience. What classes am I taking? What are we studying? A little bit about the seasons of the church and the Catholic Church and stuff like that. So just a nice touch of that. Then talk tech, which I just talk way too much tech. In Observe Tech was always about like this bulleted list of right link after link after link after link, and I'm going to adjust that a little bit, I think, because it gets so just like when I started Observe Tech, right? If I went for a couple 3 weeks without doing a show, it was so hard to get back going again. And back in those days, I didn't have the permanent setup. I had to drag my audio gear out, plug it up, set it up to record a show. So that was even another level. So one of the best things I ever did was a dedicated podcasting machine and station with my sound box and board and my mic and everything automatic, right? Because then I just had to turn on the power. So if you're ever thinking about podcasting, have a permanent setup. It's the best way to go, because you eliminate that obstacle, and it's mental as much as anything, right? I got to pull that out and I got to set it up and I got to deal, X, Y, Z. So it works to have that station set up permanently.
Rich, what have you learned? What have you learned in switching over? I mean, I liked your old podcast. Like that was to me, because I put you on 2.5 speed, not really, like 1.5 speed, which you were fast already.
I'm already a fast talker.
I used to stress me out on the way to work because I'd just try to listen to everything you were saying, try to absorb it as fast as I could. And I'd be super stressed by the time I got to work. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm listening to him. He's already a fast talker and I'm listening to him at 1.5. But it got me up to speed super fast, and so I appreciated that work. And I know why you changed it. What have you learned? You learned anything in the 6 months you made the switch over? Anything unique or different?
Nothing in particular. Like I said, it's a very similar format to what I was doing before, especially in the tech segment of that show. I think I've broadened my space aspect of things. Of course, the faith piece is brand new, so there's more there than what, because it didn't exist in Observe Tech. But the tech side, I'm still talking Windows Insider stuff. I'm Edge Insider. Since we last talked, Edge is now fully out and stable channel and progressing pretty well with features. And that's something you might hear more about next week is Edge. I'm scheduled for a couple sessions that the Edge team is doing to talk about Edge specifically. So I'm hoping maybe we might get some alerts about new features coming. But
will anyone ever trust a browser from Microsoft again? A browser by another name, a browser by another company. I mean, I can't see anybody. Listen, I hope the best for it. I mean, it's great. It strips out all the Google tracking to add their own tracking. It's a really good, it could have a lot of potential. I see zero traction in the space. Like, I just don't see it really. I don't see anybody talking about it, anyways.
Mainstream. And I agree. I think the one thing it's got going for it is the Chromium base.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Is there for where people used to go grab Chrome. Now, the one thing is Edge in Windows 10 still defaults to Legacy Edge, what they call Legacy Edge. That was the version of Edge that was released a couple 3 months after Windows 10 was released, right? Because Edge wasn't ready when Windows 10 came out in July 2015. I think it was the following fall, or maybe spring, that it was finally the new Edge, or at the time the new Edge. So the compatibility issues existed for that version of Edge because it was very proprietary, right? So kind of like IE. And in the wild west of web standards, everybody built their websites to cater to certain browsers. Edge, I guess you might say Safari back in that day, although you can't get Safari for PC anymore. people built sites in order to maximize Chrome and those browsers, and that would break in Edge or IE, because it would be incompatible. I think now that it's Chromium based, standards are getting a little bit better. I use Edge as my default daily now. I don't even have Firefox or Chrome installed on my machine. It's only Edge. They've been through some challenges. It's been teeth and pains. Don't get me wrong. There's been challenges with syncing favorites. You still can't sync history between devices.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the other setting that's not yet turned on? History, and I don't think it goes to timeline, right? For Windows Timeline, I don't think your browsing history goes to timeline. Let's see, profile sync, open tabs and history. So those are the last two kind of vestiges of kind of normal expected browser features that aren't there yet.
Yeah. I want to like it. Like I want to, and I do, but I just can't. Like it's one of those things where you're like, I just don't know if anyone's going to take it seriously or take it seriously enough to have market share. And, it's so
it may not ever.
Yeah,
I don't know, but they're certainly contributing to Chromium.
Right.
So they've made several changes there. They helped with mouse scrolling, smooth scrolling, which IE and Edge, especially old Edge, legacy Edge, was very good at. So they have made some improvements to the Chromium base.
Yeah.
So
no, it's good they're in the community and it's good for Chrome. I just don't know if Chrome is good for them. And if it's kind of actually if that'll be something that'll ever, and maybe they don't care, it ships with it. They're going to get some default users who like my mom who just use it. It's going to be their thing, right? They're going to get,
I take care of a couple people's PCs, and when I put them on Edge, they stopped installing all those crazy toolbars, and where they would call me 2 months later and go, my computer's really slow.
Joe's saying the same thing.
This is a good point, because on release preview, I think they just started offering the Edge update to some release preview devices. So I get a feeling that version 2004 that's about to get released, the May 2020 update, this may be the first version of Windows 10 where they start to push that update out and replace legacy Edge, make the new Edge the default. So yeah, I forget, there's a number floating around a few weeks ago. Was it 2 or 3%? Somebody was reporting. I don't know what net market share shows these days, but so there is a little bit, but you can probably account for that. Like you said, you can probably account for that for people that it's not a default yet, but people can get it on their systems.
This conversation's so interesting because the last time we had you on, Rich, we were talking to, Jim was asking me, okay, do these updates and everything like that, like, does it affect you, Mike? And I said no, because I had my iMac as my main driver, and then I had my Mac laptop, and the only Windows machine I was running was for SiteHound in my server rack. And now, look at today, Hannah has taken my Mac laptop as her school stuff. She uses it for that. My iMac is in the server rack running Windows, running Blue Iris. So the iMac's not even running. And then I built myself a new computer for myself that's obviously Windows. So now I'm full Windows. I don't touch, besides my iPhone, I don't touch an Apple device all day anymore, which is just so interesting, because the reason Jim brought me on the show 5 years ago was because I was the Apple guy. So we're starting to, I'm remembering all these things. It's like, okay, now that I'm in this ecosystem every single day, Edge, I honestly, when I fired it up, my default has always been get Chrome on there and go. I might actually give it a shot and see, because I'm not tied to, I don't jump between computers. So like the syncing for me for Chrome isn't that important. Just looking for a really good browsing experience. So I might actually be a pretty good candidate for Edge.
You're a perfect candidate.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. This is one thing they have done because of the Chromium base. They've got their own set of extensions that are in their own kind of collection, but you can go to the Chrome Web Store and install extensions. So the whole thing that beat up Windows Phone, I'm sorry, I mentioned Windows Phone, Windows 10 Mobile, is that app issue, right?
Yeah.
But here, the one thing this browser has that their previous version of Edge didn't, or IE, every browser in the Chrome, every extension in the Chrome Web Store can be installed. There's a button you got to toggle, but you can install extensions from the Chrome Web Store. And ever since they activated extension sync, I've been over the moon, because I am on multiple machines. And so now extensions can sync between devices.
No, and that's great with the extensions, because I only really use one. I use Bitwarden as my password manager. Yeah.
Dude, I discovered that a few months ago.
Do you
That's a great
self-host it?
open
It's
source password.
fantastic.
No, I don't self-host
Okay.
it. But that it's a great open source password manager.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely amazing. I was just looking for fun. Someone mentioned on this show, I can't remember who it was, that it was open source and you can self-host. I'm like, well, that sounds awesome. I'm a huge self-hosting guy. Oh yeah. And there's just, it's like if on Unraid, it's as easy as going to community applications. It's already a Docker that's just pre-built and you're up and running in 2 minutes. It was easy, super easy, almost too easy. And but yeah, I've been loving it. But so I run one extension. I really should give Edge a shot on this computer and see
with Edge. Now here's the other thing that you just made me think of. Another open source security piece of software is called Authy.
Okay, haven't heard of it.
Two-factor authentication tool.
Okay,
and you can run it on the desktop. So I've got Authy on my desktop. So when I'm working on the desktop, I don't have to go to the phone to get a code. I can pull it up right on the computer.
Now, because I've actually still been using LastPass Authenticator for my Authenticator, for my two-factor. So I still am in the LastPass world just for the Authenticator piece. But I like that because LastPass backs up all your 2FA. Because my biggest thing has been, okay, perfect. Because my biggest thing is, okay, on the Google one, it doesn't, like Google Authenticator scares me because that's not syncing.
They just updated last week that now you can restore. It will back up and save accounts and restore.
Oh, good.
Microsoft Authenticator got that a 3 months ago. Authy does that on every device. You can choose to back up or not back up and to update. And so Authy does well. So when I go to a brand new machine, I install Authy. I give it my master username and password, and then it will validate me and bring in my stuff.
And it has a mobile app, I'm assuming, for your phone when you are out.
Yep.
Okay, I'm all about the open source stuff, so I'm gonna have to check that one out.
So, but you just have me, so that is a great, and I don't use it. There is an Authy extension, I think, for Chrome, so it is available to do within the browser as well. But.
Okay, great. Well, because there's been all these things. When I first built this machine, we did an episode and we were talking about, we had everyone in the community in chat, and then afterwards, give me a rundown. I said, guys, this is the first time I've ever been full Windows. What are you using? What are the tools, the tricks, and stuff like that? Because even for me, going for like, if I need to do basic audio editing, GarageBand, which is free on Mac, right? Basic video editing, iMovie. Also, I'm like, ooh, like what do I use for that kind of stuff here? So the community has been a great source. But if you had to pick like your top, maybe off the beaten path Windows tool that you use on a regular basis that maybe the new user won't know about, what would you suggest?
Probably. See, I have to.
I already gave you actually Authy. That's a good
one.
Authy
is one, and Bitwarden for the password stuff. No, I would. I read a lot of RSS feeds.
Yeah.
And I use a Windows 10 app called Next Gen Reader.
Okay.
One of the first ones to partner with Feedly when Google Reader disappeared, right, and went off the map. And Feedly kind of came in and picked up the scraps from Google Reader, so Next Gen Reader allows me to see my RSS feeds from Feedly and pull them in and use them within the app, share them directly to Buffer, share them to Twitter, share them to my Facebook page, wherever I want to share stuff to.
Okay.
So if you do a lot of RSS feeds, I like it. It presents in a grid format. There's an option for a grid format. And so I've got my one button shortcut is to OneNote. So when I'm looking for stuff for my podcast, I'm a one button push and it's dropped into my OneNote folder so I can add it to my show notes. So
OneNote's the other one that I have just like recently went full into. I feel like I'm the kid who's always like late to the party, especially in this community. Like I'll start talking about something, everyone's like, "Yeah, welcome to the party, Mike. Like you're a little late on Windows #1 and OneNote and all these sort of tools." But I've used OneNote at work. I switched roles a few months ago, and I said, you know what? I'm getting rid of paper because whenever I just search through something, I just do in OneNote. And then last week, it was actually when Dave McCabe was on, he was talking about how he tracks his lawn care notes. He keeps track of every time he does things with oil changes, blade sharpening. When did I do this sort of seed or chemical on my grass? And so I'm like, I've never fired up my personal account on OneNote. And it's been amazing. It's been it's synced everywhere on all my devices. And I love how in the mobile app, I can still have my work account and my personal account all in that same one app. So I've been diving deep into the Windows ecosystem, and I have to say I've been like really enjoying it.
It's gotten quite robust, and if you use sticky notes,
Jim's just shaking his head.
If you use sticky notes on Windows 10, your sticky notes are in the OneNote app on the phone.
I have never even fired up stickies.
Yeah.
Now you got me another thing I got
because it's another app. And
I need to get another beer.
oh, okay. He's slumming. I just looked at net market share because I had to. So they're showing Chrome at 69%. Now, again, net market share, any of these things is a slice of the pie, right? It's not an internet-wide authority. But for their traffic, 69% is Chrome. Edge is 7.76%, above Firefox. So that's for April. So
was it
certainly gaining some share?
So when I think of like, when we think about Chrome, we think of like obviously a resource hog. And that got me thinking along the lines of, is it my imagination or did Windows back in the day used to have a lot of bloatware? I feel like your CPU was always at a pretty much a certain percent running. The thing I've noticed, and maybe it's just because I built a brand new system, but I mean, I've installed a lot of games on here. It's not a bare bones system by any means. I mean, my CPU sits at 1% all the time. And even like right now I'm doing this podcast, it's at 8%. And in the background, it's downloading a 90 gigabyte game. Like I feel like it's really efficient now, when back in the day, you used to compare Mac versus Windows. And it was like, wow, man, Windows is just clunky. It's got a lot of overhead to it. And now I feel like that's just been pretty much eliminated.
Yeah, I think they've done a lot of work to make it more efficient with the memory, with disk access and everything like that. I mean, I'm on a Core i5 right now. And so I'm running, my CPU is running at 32%. But this is not a powerhouse machine. This is a 4-year-old enterprise level desktop.
Right.
Machine.
Okay.
The only reason I have this on my desk is because it's got the 34-inch curved monitor. I love this widescreen monitor. I used to be a dual guy. Now I've gone single because of that. And so it's got an extra port on it. So I actually run my main desktop through this screen, but I also use the i5 itself on this device to do my podcasting.
Interesting. Yeah, I want to do actually dual widescreens, one up and one down, because I'm a quad guy right now. I have 4. I have right, middle, left, and then I have one up above. I would love to do just 2 widescreens instead of these 4 monitors, but it does allow me some flexibility. Like my one on my right here is vertical. I kind of have my workflow pretty much set up for 4 monitors.
Yeah,
my son just bought a 44-inch curved monitor, $1,500.
Crazy.
Asus.
Oh.
This is the kind you order. Like they don't make it till you order it. So he ordered it, paid for it, took 4 weeks, shipped in, $1,500. Beautiful. He's like,
amazing.
There's something else there. You doing a lot of mousing on those screens?
Yeah, well, he's a gamer, and so he's kind of using it for that, and because he can. And then he's got so he was telling me, so he's got a quad. He has a quad setup of Dell 24s they're IPS monitors from 5 or 6 years ago. And he's like, those were really great when I bought them, but Dad, after looking at this monitor, because it's got like 0 response, it's G-Sync, it's like all these things, right? He's like, I have a hard time looking at those old monitors now because they don't look as good.
Tell you. So I'm a Navy guy, right? I did 30 years in the Navy. I sailed on small ships and sailed on aircraft carriers. I set Sea of Thieves up on this 34-inch monitor. I got seasick because of the motion in the screen. So the screen feels more in my periphery. Yeah. And so those movements on the ship was like, I had the same sensations when I was on a small boy in rough sea.
Well, that's kind of so I just got a brand new, so I had 4 and I now have a new main monitor. It's an Acer, I think 27 inches, I believe, but it's got the high refresh rate, right? I've only ever had 60 hertz monitors, and now I have 144 hertz, which still isn't top of the line. But I play at that, and man, it's so smooth, and the G-Sync makes a huge difference. So this is a G-Sync monitor, which actually now supports NVIDIA GPUs. So you don't need a G-Sync. Sorry, it's not G-Sync. It's
OpenSync. No,
FreeSync.
There you go. Yeah,
right. It's a FreeSync monitor, but I'm using it with an Intel. Intel. If I can think of this, NVIDIA GPU. So those actually work now. You can use those in conjunction. And man, playing at 144 hertz when you're used to less than half of that, the smoothness of it is kind of a weird sensation to get used to. I felt like, especially on certain games, probably like Sea of Thieves, racing games, things where you have just kind of fluid motion. I was shocked. I had that like, man, have I been living in the Stone Ages like for the past few years? Because I just had never played on something that could do that refresh rate. It's been a great little upgrade.
It's a whole new world.
It
when you
is
get- when
whole
you
new
get into
world.
that, yeah.
How technology has advanced, you know,
Yeah.
and I think back to those, I came across some old photos the other day of my computer setup when I was stationed in Italy. And this would have been, let's see, the late 80s, early 90s. And I had that big CRT tube white monitor on the desk that took up like the whole desk. I mean, just crazy how far we've come with that.
I still have a 24-inch CRT in my garage. I can't bring myself to get rid of it because it was super expensive in its day. And I took that thing from place to place. And then of course it sits out in the garage. Now I've missed the opportunity to recycle it. It's going to cost me like $100 to recycle that thing at this point. But it's also a nostalgia item. Like there's not too many of those monitors left. Right. And so, I could always plug that in. It's VGA, but I could plug that thing in and it still fires up. Still got a fairly decent look to it. But yeah, it's, I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 monitors now on my desk here that, and I have a monitor problem, and they're cheap, right? They're super cheap.
Yeah, they've gotten very inexpensive.
Yeah, no. And you can just put them anywhere. And so, it's crazy how good they are. So, Rich, you changed some things around there, right? Then, so you brought your 34 kind of. You're using that kind of full time now, or is that just for podcasting?
No. So the HP device, it's called the Elite 1000. This came out about 4 years ago. So it has the 34-inch monitor on top of basically it's a laptop computer in there because the laptop it uses SODIMM memory chips. So I bumped it up to 32 or 16 gig of memory, I think. It's got a good size drive and all that stuff, and it's a decent performing system. I mean, this old system I was running on over here for my podcasting was an AMD quad core, 8 gig of RAM. So it was it's an older. It's because systems have a rotation when I build a new one, right? They rotate through this room. The wife has the third best. The worst is at the podcaster. The best is at my workstation. So I wasn't using the Elite 1000 computer for anything except for running insider builds. Yeah. So I was just installing insider builds once a week on it. That was about it. And I was like, I'd really like to shuffle this around. So I relocated all the podcaster gear over here. I spun up the i5, and it's a quad core, I think. So it's a good performing machine. And I used the 34-inch curve for my main monitor from my main desktop. So that's the one I work on all the time. And then I got the work laptop over here finally on Windows 10 as of last fall. It took them long enough, but I had a Windows 7 machine until last December, I think.
It's just surprising to me. I think the components are lasting too. So, I have a 4770, I think. Here, that number could be wrong. I can't remember, but it's a fairly, 5 or 6 years now. It's got 16 gig of RAM in it. It works for podcasting. I have no reason to do, it keeps Windows 10 keeps getting better on it, keeps getting more efficient and kind of runs better. Right. I have no reason to change out. I really got to wait for it to go bad for what I do. Now, if I was a gamer, Mike, you needed to upgrade some equipment and you did, right?
Well, I did, but I have the same thing as you. So I was running a 3770 in that rig. And I will tell you, so I just bumped up to a Ryzen 5 3600. Fantastic processor. The only time I notice a difference is when I'm gaming. Now, mind you, I'm not editing any video, and I would notice it in other areas. I know I would. But as far as like the basic tasks of browsing, listening to music, podcasting, watching YouTube videos, I could never tell you if I was on a different processor until I fire up the game, and the game's obviously a much different experience. But you're right, Jim. For most people, that's a 3rd gen Intel chip, and it was great. It worked just fine. Again, 16 gigs of RAM. If you have an SSD in there, you're just fine. That's the other hard part, is that the hardware is just lasting forever. That's why I hope this is a 5-10 year build here that I have, having put all the new stuff in there. I probably won't need it going forward.
500 gig SSD. It's a Core i7 4770. I can't believe I got the number right. Like I said, 16 gig of RAM. I've had it for, 5-6 years, whatever, I think. And it works great. Sitting next to it is a Dell Core i7 from, it's a year younger, maybe 2 years younger, that I do some mining stuff on. I'm anticipating that thing running forever. until it breaks, right? Until
Yeah.
something goes wrong, whatever, you got to swap it out. I have a Core i3 540 that had been my main driver before I went on the Core i7. That's got to be 540. I think it's got to be first or second gen Core i3, right? Still does what I needed to do, right? I mean, so it's crazy. I think the laptops are a little bit different because you just beat them up a little bit more, right? You take them places, you have batteries to deal with, all those kinds of things. But man, hardware, it's kind of disheartening sometimes because you want to swap it out faster, right? You're kind of like, and some do, right? But when it works, it's hard, especially in a time like this.
Well, this is it. And I think my current main desktop is about 3 years old. I'm running a 6-core, what is it, an AMD FX 6350, I think, in there. It's got 32 gig of RAM. It's running a 1 terabyte SSD, but it does well. And I got an NVIDIA 1050 in there or something like that, or 1051. So it does what I needed to do. I don't do a tremendous amount of PC gaming. I am running a couple of things on PC right now because I'm alpha tester for a certain piece of software that Microsoft's working on. That
What you say, Rich? Keep going.
It's what he didn't say.
It's what I didn't say.
You guys not listen to the video, you missed it. He showed it to all of us. You guys just didn't hear it on the audio.
And so it runs really well for that.
Yeah.
I've got my Xbox out. I'll be honest with you, my Xbox doesn't get powered up much these days with classes and studying and other things like that. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Although I got it. We were talking about getting seasick doing Sea of Thieves on this monitor. Fortnite. I got into Fortnite for a while about a year and a half ago, and Fortnite at certain resolution, or no, maybe it was PUBG. It had a different motion compared to Fortnite, and I would get that kind of nauseous feeling like I would at sea. I get the same thing with VR. I can't do the VR headsets because I get the same kind of sensation.
You must have your ears must not be very good.
I think they are. I mean, I've never had a balance issue or anything like that over my life. But even so, I tried all the tricks like chewing gum when you're wearing the VR headset. That's supposedly one of the things to help you not get nauseous. It didn't work. Didn't matter. So,
well, no worries. They'll come up with a VR thing that works for you. I have not yet even put my head in one of those headsets. I just have not had the interest. No, I just haven't had the interest in it.
One of the first ones that came out for Windows 10, I had the Acer headset, and they sent me the little controllers as well at one point because I bought the Acer headset. But it's cool. Don't get me wrong. And if you really want to learn about VR and that kind of stuff for Windows, Ian Dixon, who is a Windows Insider MVP, Ian, he reviews every new Insider build through his virtual reality. I mean, I think he participated in Summit through his VR goggles, and watched the sessions in his VR theater. So if you ever want to follow somebody that's an enthusiast around Windows and Microsoft stuff for VR, Ian Dixon on Twitter. He's from the UK. Just constantly talking and posting about that stuff.
He commits.
He's big time.
When he's going to do something, he commits. Rich, last question for you as we kind of bring the show in for a landing. As we've gone through these last, we'll say 9 weeks of this pandemic and lockdown and all those other things, any new tech that you're leaning on now that you maybe weren't using? We talked about the communication stuff at the front of the show. But has it changed any patterns for you, the way you use stuff? I mean, certainly now that I'm home, while you're thinking about that, like now that I'm home, Sighthound for me has become super important because it's my window. It's the Sighthound is a video. It's for security, for the security cams. And I have a front door cam. So I have not the Ring. I have a Ring doorbell as well, but I've got a cam that we call the porch cam or the package cam. And it views where the packages get laid, right? That's all its job. But in this pandemic, it sits right here. It's my view to the outside world. I'm down in the basement, right? In my office down here. I don't really have an outside view. So this camera, which I set up for security, now is actually like, what's it look like outside? Is the sun shining? My office at Gallup, we're windows everywhere. And so I'm kind of used to not Windows software, but actual windows, the glass things, right? That let the light in. So I'm kind of used to being able to see outside. I'm a weather nerd, so I love the weather. I love to know what's going on. So for me, the Sighthound, and then I started using My Radar, which is a really
That's a really good. I use that.
I on Windows I paid for it to get rid of the ads. It was like $2.99, which is super cheap.
Wait a
And
minute. Windows?
yeah, actually it's running right over here. So this is My Radar right here running on my Surface.
Like out of the Windows Store?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you can buy it in the Windows Store. They have the ad version $2.99, and then you can get the ad taken off for.
I already own it. There you go.
There you go. So it's a pretty great. I have it running full time right here, and so during the day, I'll come by and look. It's got the forecast and what it's doing, and a sweet radar with wind, and for the weather nerd, it's the perfect. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you this question too, but. So, Rich, have you changed anything new that you're doing differently because you're home all the time?
From
tech-wise.
Well, I was always home anyway, right? I was working from home anyhow. The big change for me is the no travel. So, I should have been heading to Seattle this weekend. Last week, I should have been in Orlando for a conference. So that's the bigger change. Now we're a 2-story house. We got the mother-in-law suite above the garage kind of thing, and then it's all 1-floor house. And so I'm up and out of my seat throughout the day, and I see the outdoors and things like that. The big change for me in my schedule and my routine because of the pandemic is actually 6 days a week, I head out to my church, and we're using Facebook Live to live stream the Mass to the folks that are stuck at home and can't get out. So in fact, today was our 48th live stream Mass. When we were at our 32nd a couple weeks ago, we'd had nearly 40,000 views.
Wow.
Of our streamed masses.
Wow.
I haven't done up the numbers for noon. Now this weekend, we're starting to open up a little bit, very limited, but so when we're going to continue to live stream. So I've been out every morning, 6 days a week for a drive, right? It's only about a 15, 20-minute drive to my church, but it's a drive out into the weather, live stream the Mass, and then I head home. And so there's been, and in fact, it's convinced my pastor, we're actually investing the money in a really good mountable camera that we'll run through the OBS software to continue to live stream our Masses, even when the pandemic's over.
Yeah.
So I've been learning a lot about OBS. That is the coolest program. So they're, doing that. That's a fun program to play with. It's kind of like having your own TV studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a change. Now, I'm learning how to connect OBS or actually you have to use Streamlabs on an Android. You can't use the OBS open source software because it's not available on Android, but Streamlabs uses that as their. Mm-hmm. So I'm learning how to connect that to Facebook, try to automate this a little bit more, because at some point I'm going to have to start traveling again. So we have to have the tools in place to be able to automatically start live streaming our church Masses. So it's been interesting delving into this live streaming thing, because it's nothing I've ever done much of.
Yeah.
And so because people are hungry for that connection, right? It's me and my wife here at the house. We had, I think on Easter, my daughter and her family visited, and we set the card table up on the front porch, and they ate out there. We ate at the kitchen table, had an open window. I mean, my wife threw a sheet over her to give her a hug for the first time in 5 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Because we saw it online that was the way you gave somebody a hug in this time of not contact. So it's been a whole new approach to kind of how you use technology. And I talked about this on one of my podcasts a few episodes ago. Imagine going through this pandemic 15 years ago in 2005, right? Before social media, before the streaming services, we were still going to Blockbuster and renting physical tapes to bring home a VHS tape and throw it in a machine to watch a movie, right? How different this experience would have been, not only for work, but just for personal stuff, right? And doing what we do. People have been watching a lot more broadcast TV than they do these days. So
it's interesting, the gamers have been doing this OBS streaming everything for the longest time, and it was the churches that brought it to the mainstream for everybody, right? Like, oh, you can do all this kind of stuff. And so, your church, our church as well, we've done some drive-in services. So we get a big parking lot, and they set up a truck with a lift on it, and the pastor's up there, and everybody can just pull in like a drive-in theater. They have big screens and stuff. And I was like, wow, like if we would have done this before the pandemic, nobody would have come, and but necessity is a mother of inventions. Mike, anything, so we think about the last 9 weeks, any technology you've particularly leaned on?
For me, it's been not necessarily leaned on, but having all of a sudden the time to use. So I sit here at the desk, and if I turn to the left is my work laptop. And so I sit at my work laptop all the time, which means I have the ability now to monitor things. And I love monitoring things. So I monitor my Unraid server, Plex, all that stuff. So I've actually been diving deep into using Grafana and building out really custom Grafana dashboards to monitor everything. So getting all of that up and running, be able to sit here and almost have like this network control center type thing where all my monitors are showing me something about my network. Setting up, obviously, I'm sitting here all the time now. So it was really important for me to get my security camera monitor up there. So putting a monitor up there with that's Jim, actually, this is using the Kangaroo. The Kangaroo
cool.
is running Linux, and that is just a Chromium browser and plugged into Blue Iris. So that's how I monitor all my security. So it's just like sitting down here. Yeah. I'm usually at work and I have no need to, but then it turned into, okay, now I need to build a different profile for Blue Iris because I'm here. I don't need notifications, if all the notifications. So I built a home profile and away profile. And so it's been fun for me. There's not really probably no new tech. It's just finding different ways to have fun while I'm sitting here, and might as well monitor it if I can. We're huge stat nerds. You and I, when we were mining back in the day, that was the fun part about it was, watching all the stats on the miners and how are they doing and everything like that. And you probably still have a monitor dedicated to viewing some of those miners. Yeah, you do. Yeah, exactly. So for us nerds like that, it's a lot of fun to be able to see that type of data.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. You just mentioned, and Rich, you're already working from home, but for the two of us, our security profiles changed because we went from worried about nobody was here to somebody's here all the time now. And so that kind of changed the way I use my cameras and started thinking like, okay, I don't know if I need as many pictures, as I was getting before. Do I really need all that? I mean, I'm kind of here. And yet the other day, a neighbor came by to drop off some, he made some sourdough for us and brought it over fresh, hot, still warm, right when he brought it over. It was great. And I saw him at the door, like I was down here. I'm like, oh, my neighbor's here. So, pop out to get it. And so there are those moments too, I think, in our neighborhoods where we may be seeing more of our neighbors because they're actually home, right? Or whatever. And so I've really been trying to focus on what are the good things in this.
Yeah, no, that's what you got to do.
What are the good things? How do we focus on that? And how do we take our tech in that arena too? And what kind of things can we do? What's different? What's new? My son, my Marine son, who's coming home, will be home this summer and then gets out of the Marines this fall. Will be living with us for a while. He decided to build his own. And Mike, actually, next week I'm going to raid his parts box. So you and I are going to get, or we're going to, because he had them all shipped here, and then he had his brother take them out of the box and they put them in kind of his storage box. So next week on the show, we're going to break into that box. Now, I'm not going to unbox anything like that.
Love
I'm
it.
not going to be that kind of dad, but we're going to preview. He doesn't know we're going to do this, so don't tell him. We're going to preview his build and critique his build before he does. So if you're around next week and you want to come see Mike and I break into my son's build, he won't get home. He has incredible discipline. This is a kid who's shipping parts home 2 months ahead of time. So they'll be there for him. I would not have that kind of discipline. I need it. Like I buy it. I want it. I need it.
Exactly.
Right. So this kid's got some serious discipline. So he'll be putting that together when he gets home. Rich, great to see you.
It was great to be on. Thanks.
Glad you are healthy and well and staying well and sounds like you're doing all the necessary things to do that as well. Appreciate you and your work in the community, and hope folks get over there. If I threw a link in the show notes, I'm going to throw a link in the show notes for Rich's new podcast as well, Faith, Tech, and Space. I'm sure you can find that. You mentioned that. You can find that anywhere podcasts are found. And if you want to get a dose, I'm sure it's still a heavy dose of tech, and probably even in the style you did it before, right? It's
same style. Yeah.
I love
the
it.
tech part is like,
yeah. Yeah, just kind of blow through the links. Mike, thanks for jumping in tonight as well. Always good to see you. We'll do a little bit of post show with that. A couple reminders kind of on our way out. One, don't forget theaverageguy.tv hosted and kind of sponsored by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. You know, it's Christian doing a great job for us. He's got room for more partners, by the way. Anybody who wants to host a website, do some kind of media hosting, it's super secure, and he'll get you super fast service. So maplegrovepartners.com. Plan start as little as $10 a month. Mike, I think you're using Maple Grove for a site and some email.
I am. Yep.
As well. Contact Christian. He'll get you hooked up as well. A couple reminders. Send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. I've been having trouble talking all day. I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe it's just Thursday. You can also download the app if you want to listen live on the road. We don't really do that right now, but when we do, homegadgetgeeks.com. And we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv live. This may be the first one in a while we didn't go over an hour and 20. So enjoy the extra time that you have if you're listening to the podcast. Thanks for doing that. By the way, if you are a podcast listener and you haven't done it yet, head out to theaverageguy.tv/subscribe. Get on our mailing list. I'm calling it mostly weeks. I will send you some kind of just quick notification, a little bit what's going on with me, and then some updates here on the network. Theaverageguy.tv/subscribe. Sign up. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. If you're listening live, stay around for a smidgen of post show, and the emergency Bud Light will get open during the post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.